This is one of those questions that sounds almost too obvious to ask until you actually start digging into the specifics, and then it turns into one of the most genuinely fascinating rabbit holes in early human history. Imagine a small group of prehistoric humans gathered around a fire, their shadows flickering against the cave walls. They're not speaking the languages we know today, yet they're clearly communicating. Their hands move in deliberate patterns, facial expressions shift rapidly, and the sounds they make are rhythmic yet varied. Did humans genuinely have a rich tapestry of communication that existed before spoken language? And if so, why did these methods persist with such consistency across different early human societies? Let's actually dig into the concept of gestural communication, sometimes also referred to as manual gesture theory. The idea here is that before the complexities of spoken language evolved, our ancestors relied heavily on hand gestures to express ideas and convey messages. The mechanism is fairly straightforward. Manual gestures are highly visible and can be combined in myriad ways to communicate complex concepts. A fascinating example of this can be observed in primates like chimpanzees, who are known to have a repertoire of around 60 distinct gestures, each capable of conveying different meanings. Another intriguing instance is the use of American Sign Language today, which offers a glimpse into how a fully gestural language can convey just as much nuance as spoken words. But here's where this gets even more interesting. You might think the reliance on gestures would fall apart at night or in dense foliage where visibility is low. Yet these early humans developed auditory gestures or vocal calls to complement their hand signals. This dual system suggests that even when gestures didn't suffice, early humans could still communicate effectively. So while gestures provided a visual language, they also set the stage for vocalizations, paving the way for speech to eventually emerge as a primary mode of communication. But how did they decide what gestures and sounds to use, and why? How does an animal even know which gestures or sounds carry meaning to another? This brings us to proto-language, or what's sometimes called proto-linguistic communication systems. The notion here is that our ancestors used a combination of basic vocalizations, facial expressions, and body movements as a precursor to full language. This system wasn't just about survival. It involved social bonding and sharing information like where food could be found or potential threats were lurking. Interestingly, studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, such as the Hadza in Tanzania, show that their communication often relies on a mix of clicks and body language, indicating a deep evolutionary root. This seems to work until you consider that some early human species, such as Neanderthals, had the physical capability for complex speech, with hyoid bones similar to modern humans. Why didn't they just leap into spoken language right away? It seems that proto-language had a social element that complex speech lacked initially. The use of shared rudimentary sounds and gestures fostered tighter social groups. However, as communities grew and tasks became more complex, the limitations of proto-language became apparent, prompting the development of more structured verbal communication. So the early reliance on these systems speaks to a period of evolution when social cohesion was paramount. But how exactly did they transition from these proto-languages to fully developed speech? What evolutionary process enabled the leap from proto-languages to structured spoken languages? That leads us to the FOXP2 gene, identified as the so-called language gene. FOXP2 plays a crucial role in the development of speech and language in humans. This gene affects neural circuits in the brain that are implicated in the fine motor control necessary for articulation. In 2002, a study revealed that while humans and chimpanzees share 98% of their genetic code, the FOXP2 gene differs in just 2 key amino acids, enabling humans to produce complex speech. Here's a fascinating finding. While the common ancestor of humans and Neanderthals lived around 800,000 years ago, recent genetic studies confirmed that Neanderthals also shared this FOXP2 gene with modern humans. This suggests that the genetic groundwork for speech predates the divergence of these species. Yet, some researchers believe Neanderthals didn't develop languages as intricate as ours. This indicates that while the genetic capacity was there, the social and environmental pressures needed to foster complex language were perhaps missing. This brings us back to the evolution of communication, suggesting that the genetic basis alone wasn't enough. Cultural and social factors played a huge role in shaping the languages we use today. So, what cultural and environmental factors actually spurred the development of distinct languages? Moving into the realm of symbolic thought, a fascinating concept, sometimes referred to as cognitive revolution theory, we find that the emergence of symbolic thought was pivotal. This theory posits that humans started using symbols to represent objects, actions, and even abstract thoughts, a leap that transformed communication. Cave paintings, estimated to be around 40,000 years old, like those in Lascaux, France, illustrate this symbolic capability. These artworks aren't just decorations. They're communications across time, telling stories and conveying cultural knowledge. But if symbolic thought was such a game-changer, why don't we see similar artifacts from all early human societies? Interestingly, some societies had oral traditions so strong that they felt no need to record their experiences in physical forms. The Aboriginal cultures of Australia, for instance, have a rich oral history that has preserved stories and knowledge for tens of thousands of years. This juxtaposition emphasizes that the value and method of communication were deeply influenced by the needs of the society and their environment. As humans spread across different terrains and formed diverse cultures, the modes of communication diversified, leading to the myriad languages and dialects we have today. Which brings us back, full circle, to that scene around the prehistoric campfire. Those early humans, with their gestures and rhythmic sounds, weren't just surviving. They were laying the groundwork for the complex tapestry of human communication that would follow. And that is a pretty incredible legacy to have started with a few simple gestures and sounds.